My name is Owen Benn, and I was born in Toowoomba. I lived the first few years of my life with my parents, of course, on a property at Cambooya. Oh, I still well remember the one night on the Gan, and the train pulled up for some reason, I don't know why, and the hotel was just across the dirt road, the other side of the road. And after a stop of about 10 minutes, a few of the venturous ones hopped out and went over to the pub. And it was quiet. A few more went over. And it wasn't long before, almost half, I suppose, the men on that train were over at the pub. And the train blew its whistle and started to move. Well, they didn't want to be stuck there. They all ran out and the train wouldn't stop. It just went slowly a bit further and a bit further until we can get on. When they started to get on, the train driver must have thought, oh, this is a bit risky, we'll have somebody's hurt here. So they stopped, let them all on. And then there was still more to come. So they backed the train up, waited for them. And that was, I was very amused at that lot, the way the train driver kidded them out of the hotel. And he just settled in to finish off his weight. I don't know what it was all about. Another one, the Japs, when they bombed, they knocked the communications completely out in Darwin. And Darwin had, I don't think they expected Japan to attack Australia or to attack from the Darwin side. We didn't expect them to attack there. It was that beautiful cliff along the water, and they've got their infrastructure on the top of it. It's just ridiculous. It got blown to pieces. And the staff at the post office got in their slit trench, which all had to have a slit trench, and the bomb fell in the trench, killed them all. And then the wall of the Shire office or the council office, they've got a piece of metal. See that mass photograph of me? It's that big with jagged edges, bits coming out of the ground. That's one piece of the shrapnel that they held out. Well, they cleaned up the communications in Darwin, so the army put their heads together and said, well, we've got to shift it. Where will we go? Catherine. They shifted to Catherine. That night Catherine was bombed. How's that for information? Yes, I think we put those with our first job, putting the pump in. I think that would have been April 41. We started doing all that work. We built. Not I had nothing to do with building the tanks, but the unit, the 2nd 11th Field Company. We built high water tanks and all sorts of things for a big army camp, and they had 4,000 men there in that time. It was just a staging camp for Catherine from there on. Well, I've told you the one with the hat. Well, the next one is Colin. He was a school teacher, and obviously he just felt the urge that things were not going very well. And he was very fortunate. He went to Canada to do his training, Empire Air Training Scheme, because and they wear a bit of white in their cap. And then Jack, the next one, well, he was flight lieutenant when the war was over, but he was shot down a few times, but always managed to parachute. And Jack left us and joined the Air Force. He seemed to think that he could do more in the Air Force than in the Army. He was sent to Canada also and did his training there, but he didn't last very long. He was a bomber. Lancaster, he's a navigator of Lancaster, and he didn't finish his first tour. He was killed, and then Ernie joined the Navy, and he was only in it for 2 years, I think. And he came out of it unscarfed. I couldn't get a photograph of him with his hat on. I was 20. Colin was 24. Jack was 10 years older than me. He was 30. And then he was 18 months older than him. He was 32. Our way of entertaining ourselves, to start with, most farms had a bit of flat ground and a fence around it for a tennis court. And it did exactly the same job as the expensive one, but there were always parties on Saturday afternoon. People didn't work on Saturday. So you worked 5 days a week and Saturday, Sunday off. And we made our own riding horses, for instance. And the kids would never get an opportunity to ride horses. In the paper here the other day, there's a photograph of somebody's got these old photos, and they send one in every now and then to the paper, the way we were. And these kids, 4 of them, one behind the other, on this pony, they're off to school. Now, Newberry was a mile from the school, the homestead. It was a mile from the school. You possibly haven't had much to do with Clydesdale, but they're big-hearted, as well as being big in structure. And they're very good-natured. The majority of them, you had no trouble. My father used to break them in a team, by 8 horses in a team. If he was short of a horse, he'd go and get one of the 2-year-olds that hadn't been handled, and or had been handled enough that you could put a halter on it and lead it round. Put it in amongst the other horses, and for the first, it was strapped in there, of course. For the first couple of 100 yards, he doesn't know what to do, and he's walking and then going forward and all this sort of thing. Put up with that, within an hour or so, tired of that, and he's just walking along the same as the other horses. He's broken in. Well, you can't do that with a thoroughbred. And now the kids used to come home from school. My mates would come home with me, and we'd go to where the team was working, and they all had to be knocked off in the summer when they're wet with sweat. They had to be knocked off early enough that the sweat would dry before the night came. Otherwise, it's bad for them to have the sweat dry at night under cover. They had to dry out in the sun and then go into the horse stalls for the night. And they'd come over, half a dozen of them, all get on the back of the horses coming home. And they'd come home, some of them would trot home and some of them would walk, most of them would walk. And there was a trough just near the shed where they were housed. And their food is out in the food troughs in the shed. And they'd come to the horse trough, of course they're thirsty, and they have a drink, and draft horses particularly always do this. They have a drink and then they shake, and they really shake. And these kids are still on them. There used to be some funny episodes. The kids that hadn't been riding them for long when they struck their first shake. Getting back to the Clydesdale, where Clydesdale was a little bit light for the work, and she turned into the handy horse, do a bit of anything. Well, we were milking cows. We had to take the milk to the cheese factory, which was in Cambooya. It was owned by my father along with 3 other farmers. And we'd put the cream cans in the back of the cart, and then we kids, I was the youngest, and I always had two sisters and 2 brothers while I was going to school at Cambooya. So that's 5 of us. Could get in, drive the horse to the cheese factory. The man in the cheese factory would tip the milk out and put them all back in the back of the cart. When they're empty, they'd be rattling and making a noise. Then we'd drive onto the school, we'd hop out and give the old horse a slap on the rump and say, "Go on home." And the front gate would be left open, and she'd trot off home with these cans rattle. And when she gets to the gate posts were all scarred. She'd be walking through, and the wheel outside wheel hit the post. She'd look around, back up, have another go. Both posts on either side were scarred. And she'd home and just almost to the back door, wait for somebody to let her out to take her harness off her. Gatton College. Now, if you're working on the farm, you're entitled to smoko. I don't know why they thought this up, but if you're working in the poultry, or the piggery, or the dairy, you don't get smoko. So anyway, that's the way it was. Now, the piggery had a horse named Dick. Dick lived in the piggery. And Dick's job was, morning and night, to hold a sledge, just a homemade sledge, with 2 44-gallon drums of pig food. And it had come from a boiler, which was at the starting point, and they just filled the drums up a couple of times. And get up, Dick. Dick knew which way to go, and when he got to this long row of feed pens with the shelves right at the front. Dick would stop in the right place with a bucket. The fellow would give him a couple of buckets. Get up, Dick. And he knew when to stop for the next one. Get up, Dick. And then when it was empty, and he knew that because it was getting lighter all the time, home, Dick. Dick, go back for another lot. And you can imagine how Dick was smarter than an average horse. And the smoko cart was coming along. And the fellow said to me, that the two of us working in the piggery, see if we can get Dick to come over and get some smoko. So we took Dick over to the fence. Dick was holding his head over the fence. And the smoko cart, we yelled out, give Dick some smoko. Well, there's only bread and butter. And a cup of black tea. And Dick got his bread and butter. And from that day onwards, he met the smoko cart every day. Never miss. And in one of the annual magazines that they called for contributions several years ago, I put that bit in the magazine. And another bit about one of the fellows that was studying to be a vet. And he just came across the dinky dye vet that was tutoring us. And he said, I shot Dick this morning. Did you what? I shot Dick. Why did you do that? Oh, he can hardly walk. And he's too old. He can hardly walk. And he said, that doesn't mean you can shoot him. I said shod, not shot. So I put that in because the fellow that's involved, he's still at the college. I put it in for his benefit. But I went down there to my granddaughter's graduation the other day, and she did remarkably well. She got a distinction in every subject. And she came up right in the very beginning on her own. And I gave a little bit about her, how well she'd done. And she was free. And that college, I was lost. I couldn't find, I knew what building it was supposed to be in, but they don't have signs on the building. They should have. And we were quite a long time finding the right building. And we'd been into a few and they were the wrong ones. And I realised that it doesn't matter where you stand, you're looking, you can't see out. You're looking at a building. And then the ground in between all these buildings that seem to have grown without plan, it seems to me that if they can find a bit of bare land, they'll build a building on it. And all the ground in between, well, there's not, well, it's just black soil up there, and it's bitumen. And everybody knows how hot bitumen gets. Well, I reckon that temperature out on that bitumen at the college, or if you're walking from one village to another, I reckon it was well into the 40s. And to keep the big hall cool enough for the function, they had all around the building, I think they had 6 or 8 fans, blades this big, and a thermometer dial there showing what temperature it is. And they were pumping air into that at 20 degrees to keep it so that they could have the function. Another thing is swimming. Swimming. People have taught to swim in tanks, in stock water tanks. I learned to swim in a stock water tank. And it's just incredible the number that we had no swimming pools. The Gatton College didn't have a swimming pool. They've got one now, but they didn't have a swimming pool in my time. We swam in the Locker Creek. It's bone dry now.
Would be.
Yes, there used to be a big orange orchard right at Grantham, and it was irrigated. And I bought a case of oranges from him. I said, "Where do you get your water?" And out of a wall. And I said, "Is it standing up to it?" "Oh yes," he said, it'll never be dry." They had to close the orchard down. It was pretty rough courtship. Yes. Yes. Well, I'll tell you how I met my wife. I knew her father, who was a grazier at Charleville, and he used to buy and sell a lot of sheep. And I often had a little bit to do with him and a tiny bit to do with him in business. And he and his wife became friendly with my brother and his wife, and they used to come out from Charleville and see what it was like on the farm, stay for a few days, weekend, that sort of thing. I went, no, I didn't. They went fishing on the Condamine, and they went to Rangers Bridge. You know where Rangers Bridge is? Rangers Bridge over the Condamine is 12 miles from Dalby West, and it's called Rangers Bridge because Larry Range was a bushranger. That's Rangers Bridge. Well, we had our annual wet season, and we used to get them those days. We never missed. And I was living on the property another 10 miles further west, and I heard that they were going fishing on a Sunday, and I thought I'd join them. Well, I got there, and this young lady was walking across the bridge. She shouldn't have been, but she was, with the water about that deep over the bridge, over any part of the floor of the bridge. And she walked over the edge. And I pulled her out. If I hadn't, she would have been gone. Anyway, he gave her a good talking to about walking over bridges and the waters there. Well, that was the first of it. And then I was batching, and I used to get the food stuff delivered sometimes, and all sorts of nice things. And it just developed until 12 months later we decided we'd marry. And that went on for 63 years, I think. And then she passed away 8 years ago. She was my only serious girlfriend. Yes, and came here on the day the Twin Towers fell. I came here for her health's sake. She was having heart problems and angina, and the doctor in Roma said, if you don't get Mary to where there are specialist doctors, you could lose her. And I thought, well, where do you suggest? And he said, oh, go to Toowoomba. They're all there. So I was 81. And I tell people that David sacked me when I turned 81. she's pretty right. When we came here, I made the property over to able to keep it going, and I think he's done a marvellous job with it. Anyway, we reared 4 children out there. The eldest boy was not interested in the land very much, and he went to the Department of Agriculture and Stock. I think it was called Agriculture and Stock in those days. Sydney University, and got his degree. And unfortunately, he'd only just got that far when he succumbed to cancer, and we lost him. Well, then we had twin daughters. One of them is retired in Brisbane. He was he had a degree in, I've forgotten what it is, medical, and she worked in Prince Charles, almost the same thing. She worked there for, I don't know, about 20 years after her children had all grown up. And another daughter, I have a little property out here at Greenmount which is frightfully drought-stricken, and she's gone back to work to help out. And she's got her own business of training ex-nurses who have left the nursing profession to rear a family, and then when they come back, no jobs for you, you've been away from nursing for too long. And she took it on herself to start a company which she calls Arcadia Training, and she brings them back into the profession over a 6-month period, and they can get jobs, and they're getting jobs, and she's pretty happy with that. She gets reasonable pay to do it. It's very similar to what the government was doing when Can-Do decided, we shouldn't be saying that here, to save money he sacked a lot of them, and the ones that were nearly through asked Anne, my daughter, couldn't you take it over for us to finish our training, which she did, and she's been doing it ever since. The next generation, the last grandchild, they all got degrees of one sort and another. The last grandchild took her degree in nursing, and was immediately placed in the Mater in Brisbane. And after a couple of years, she was put straight in the theatre. After a couple of years in the theatre, she applied for a transfer back into the wards, because she said, I've been nursing here for 2 years, I think. Here 2 years, and I've never made a bed. I've never done anything in the wards. And I'm tired of broken up bodies every weekend from motorbikes and from drink. If you don't transfer me, if you don't transfer me to the wards, I'll apply for a shift. And I said, no, we can't do without you. And she said, well, I'm going. And she applied to St Andrews here, got in, and after she was there for a week or so, they said, oh, we're short of a nursing sister in the theatre. She said, well, I'm not going. And I said, well, we can't do without you. And she said, I'm still not going. And she took another degree in agronomy. And she had 2 jobs waiting for her when she got her degree last Tuesday, and got two jobs waiting for her that day. And so far she's happy as Larry with the job that she's taken. Well, I'm certainly proud to call myself a Queenslander. And Queensland has accepted me. I've got a national medal as a volunteer, and I've been a JP for 70 years, and that all comes from association with the environment and the country and the people. You've got to be nominated for these things, you just don't get them. But that's not doing much for the young people. We didn't have money, we didn't have motor cars. For instance, when I was at Gatton College, there was one car on the college, and that was the principal. The only one that could have a car. Wages didn't stretch to that, and no, I do think that we went through a better time than what the young ones are. We never had drugs. We might have had a beer occasionally, but you're restricted to having a very small amount because you had no money. Pound a week was, in my youth, was, if you had a job, that's what you got. If you wanted more, you didn't get a job unless you had qualifications. But we had far more communication with one another, with country dances, the picture show. When there wasn't a dance on, there was always the picture shows. The Dolby had 3 picture theatres when I was a kid. I haven't got one at all now. And tennis courts, tennis has survived out in the country because that's something that's the one thing that brings young people, older people, both sexes, brings them together. They all like tennis. There's very few people who don't play tennis. They mightn't play it very well, but they do join in. And then there's out in the Arcadia Valley, we built 2 flexi-paved courts, and they're right beside a hall that we built, concrete brick hall. And the Arcadia Valley women are noted for the food they put on the table, and the jackasses are noted for the number of bits of cake that they take off that table. They soon learn, and when they put the food on the table, and they always have a tea towel in their hand to wave around at the get out jackass. It's too hot to play in the daytime, so I play at night. It's all flooded. I'm looking forward to leading the Anzac March. I've got a crook leg at the moment, but that's temporary. That'll be recovered, and I'll be able to do it. And I'm getting a bit of support from the RSL, of course, because of I think the RSL told the chap that runs the Remembrance Day, I think they told him that they had to include me. From what I gather, I just spoke over at a morning tea at a Probus meeting. The chap that runs it also belongs to the same Probus club, and he just called over to me, over the heads of about a dozen people, "You're carrying the torch." That's the invitation I got.